Where'd you get these two guys from?
Hello, you're very welcome along to another episode of the Tackling Sport podcast. It's Daniel here, joined alongside me by my brother Sean.
How's it going?
And we've got Premier League predictions later on in the episode, but delighted to welcome on the line a Portlaoise Senior Ladies manager, Stephen Duff. Stephen, welcome to the podcast.
Hi guys, how are you? Good to see you again.
Not too bad, keeping well, Stephen. Like, we were planning on doing a bit of an inter-county championship preview in a couple of weeks, but we had to get you on. Just in the world of GA, there's a lot going on. But firstly, with yourself, can tell us about your own experience, because last time we spoke to you, you were heading into that county title with Portlaoise Senior Ladies. Well, how did you get on, and then what the subsequent events had led to?
Yeah, so we had a really good week. That week we had our first ever, Portlaoise Club's first ever senior county title win, beating Sarsfields on their course for the 8th in a row, which was great. We enjoyed that weekend as much as we could. But 7 days later, we had our first ever venture into Leinster, and we have now qualified for Leinster final against Foxrock Cabinteely, which was due to be last Sunday gone, yeah. Losing kind of concept of time with these lockdowns, but it was supposed to be last Sunday. That got postponed, and we've got a date now of January 17th. So that's where we're at. Great achievement for the club, great achievement for the girls. A lot of them girls have been on that senior team for up to 15 years, and they'd only ever reached, suppose, 3 county titles prior to this. And the club is despite Portlaoise being an overly successful club in the male code, the ladies have struggled to replicate that, and it was a target of us this year to try and get the same support and same footing as the lads did, and the girls achieved that, and they're going to push that on a bit further, and we're going to continue to try push that on and try cement our places in Leinster a bit better than than they have in the past. So yeah, that's where we're at, and good week all around, and then or good 2 weeks all around, and then with Ballyfin male side, we actually qualified for our second ever semi-final, which first one was last year, second one was this year by beating the Heat, and then well, we were kind of prepared for this, but in Laois, due to the second lockdown that we had, all games were postponed until after Laois are finished in the championship. So we're looking at earliest being 21st, 22nd of November, COVID pending, and pending Laois losing to Dublin in the Leinster semi-final. And again, giving us
plan ahead, I think.
Yeah. unless Desi has really shagged it, I don't know. I don't think there's any other day.
Well, listen, just before we move on to the county thing, so January 17th, maybe focus on Portlaoise ladies more here. Was there much communication in terms of, because it seemed a sudden announcement from the GA?
It was really difficult. When that message came through from the GA management committee that everything was being cancelled, I was actually on the call preparing our logistics for the Sunday Leinster final. And email came through, and I read it out to the guy I was on the phone to, and the both of us laughed, saying, that must be a mistake. The games are surely going behind closed doors and not being cancelled. And it was only then when I flicked over to my Facebook's page and refreshed there, and I could see everything was cancelled. Extremely difficult for us as a squad and as a group who had never won and never ventured into Leinster, and then to have achieved all we could have and done all we could have in that competition, to have that taken away from me 5-6 days out from a Leinster final was bitterly disappointing. From an organisation and coaching point of view, it's so difficult now to try and keep girls motivated, keep girls focused, and keep girls fit for a January 17th date. What we've done is we've let them go for a couple of months. So 6 to 8 weeks are going to be away from us. They'll be given home plans, home workouts like they were in lockdown. And then we'll hopefully get back on the field in December, try get them back to a base level before Christmas, and then taper in on football after Christmas. But it's just a nightmare situation to try and plan. But look, we just have to react to what it is. It's out of our control. You just wish that maybe if the GA and the Central Committee and Management Committee and whatever titles they have, maybe they've had away to 12 or 14 more hours, they might have seen that we weren't going into level 5 lockdown, and maybe these games could have had a 10-day window to say, right lads, you've got 10 days to get your championships run off. They're all behind closed doors. The pubs are going to be closed. You're responsible for your own club's activities. Anything that seems to be bringing the game to disrepute, you will be punished for it and sanctioned for it. So that would have made the most sense to me, but they've been really conservative in what they've done, and maybe a bit of protectionism is going on here as well to protect the inter-county championship, seeing as they are getting that €50 million support scheme from the government, and it is the cash cow of the GA. So, but lads, actually, since we discussed last, our idea of GA Go has taken off, so I think we should take credit of that. Put it down to Tackling Sport.
Absolutely. Get on to our club, what was it, the club county split season episode where we basically just talked about now we might have been stating the obvious, but it's still like the GA haven't been doing the obvious for years, Stephen. So I guess the frustrating thing on the club being called off, it was in a reaction a few weeks ago to the Black Rock parade, amongst other things. Although that was more or less referenced without in everything bar name, and I guess this was going on all over the country. Look, whether we like it or not, it was, and I guess they were probably the only one to put on social media. You want to come in, Sean?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't get what the GA expected to happen. Look, I think the Black Rock, the hurling thing is just, I think it's just the worst of the worst in terms of this year. But like, how they expected clubs not to celebrate, and that's the problem. I thought there was no increased measures. Like, the government could have maybe agreed a plan with the government to, if a team wins a county championship, that they can have an extra gathering or something like that. Because look, teams are kind of left on a limb. You think of some of the great stories this year, like Killadangan and the Tipperary Senior Hurling title. Like, do you expect them that they didn't celebrate, in a non-socially distant way? Like, and I just think the government, I don't know about you, Stephen, but I think the government might have just left clubs in the lurch a little bit, and maybe they could have agreed something or brought in different measures where if you have the celebrations, that you might isolate for 2 weeks afterwards or something like that, because with everything that came out afterwards, it just seemed that GA blamed the clubs where maybe the clubs were left in limbo.
Yeah, like for me, when John Horn came out, and it was kind of like, let's punish him after it was just, they could have been a lot more proactive about what went on. They claim an email came out warning clubs that if you're to continue to behave like this, there will be sanctions. But in that email, it just said no more, try avoid team huddles, try avoid team photographs. There was no of, lads, if you continue like this, everything's going to be cancelled. There was no mention of that. There could have been a lot more proactivity from the GA's part and the government's part to let them know that this is a possibility, that this was going to happen. Like you said, Sean, teams are going to celebrate. We celebrated ourselves. There was 200 fans in O'Moore Park. They weren't allowed onto the field after this. It was stewarded very well. But the players were hugging, crying, arms all over each other. And then some of their parents, when they went over towards the trophy presentation, some of their parents were there and they met them with a hug. That's happening across the country and more, I would imagine. 10 times more. We're seeing up in Donegal, we're seeing all these kind of areas that it's just happening. It's natural. And for some reason this year, the droughts are being ended and the first time evers are happening, and it's just massive celebrations. And they could have been a lot more proactive about this, and they could have communicated throughout as we're coming up to finals with reminders of saying, guys, like, measures need to be followed and guidelines need to be followed, or we were disappointed with what happened last week and this is why we're disappointed. Can we try and pull this together? But instead of sending out an email and saying no more team photos, no more huddles, and then 4 days later cancelling everything, it just seems like, to me, and I said this to you, Daniel, is that it seems like they're just protecting the inter-county season, and that's in some ways fair, but to the club player who is 95% of the organisation, it's just a little bit unfair.
Absolutely, yeah, and I guess the GA's come a long way since they were calling out Ronan Glynn in the middle of all this. Do you remember that happened? A bit of madness on their part, to be fair. I think they try. I think for that situation, they try to ride the anger of a lot of people, but even some people were like, what are we doing, calling out NEFIT, who are looking after public health. But anyway, moving on to a story that broke there last week, and this is a story that's been ongoing, Stephen. You've been in these circles for ages, and I know you've mentioned this to me in the past, and I guess for people outside, women's football and women and Camogie would probably not be aware of this. And the GA have had these struggles, but they always do seem to deal with it okay in terms of if there's a football and hurling clash, that they work it out because, they're under the same umbrella.
Yeah.
The LGFA and the Camogie, there have been a lot of clashes recently, and you can give a couple of examples. What's happened lately, and what was voted in Congress there in Camogie?
Okay, so this probably started back in February when it started in day one, which is as long as LGFA and Camogie are apart from the GAA, which is a long time. But this reared its ugly head again officially in February when the LGFA went to their Congress with this exact same motion that the Camogie went to, and acknowledging dual players, and that was turned down by Congress as well. So what happened then 2 weeks ago in Tipperary was pretty high profile, was when Ashley Maloney came out from Care GAA to kind of bring to the attention of the public and outside of Tipperary what was going on. She was being asked to play, and her teammates were being asked to play a Camogie County final on Saturday. and a ladies football county final on Sunday, which, just to make everyone aware, is the norm. It happens across the country, all over it. But this was happening to Ashley Maloney and Ashley McCarthy and Roisin Howard, who were three quite high-profile players in LGFA and in Camogie. And people were shocked to hear this went on, but this is a regular occurrence. Okay, it was happening to our own Portlaoise that weekend. We were in the county final. We were lucky enough that football was first, from my own personal point of view. But that's not the point. The welfare of the players needs to be the point, and they're the only people who seem to lose out. So then, where it got to kind of real prominence and national prominence was at the weekend when the Camogie had their national conference, and the same motion was not passed to acknowledge the rights of a dual player and that they would try and facilitate dual players when it came to fixtures. And it was unanimously voted on. I think it was 77% to 22%, 23%. So it's something that is just it happens across the country. It happens weekly. Games being played days consecutively. It's something that needs to be fixed. In my mind, it's an easy fix. It's put it all under the one umbrella. The LGFA were invited into the GAA a couple of years ago, and they said no. I have my own opinion on that and why that happened, but it just needs to be fixed, because the only people that seem to be losing out here are the players and the girls who do play. And for whatever about county, okay, if you can't play dual at county, that's because of the levels that are expected of you. You should at the very least be able to play dual at your club level, and they should be facilitated for you, and every opportunity should be given for you to recover after a game and then go play another game. Why can't they go on consecutive weekends or vice versa? I don't know. I know there's fixtures headaches there. I wouldn't sit in the fixtures committee, but there needs to be forward-thinking people on this, because the only ones losing out are the girls.
Yeah, and you think it's just bonkers that, like, you know, in this day and age, that in sports where we're losing players after the age of 17, 18, 19, and then you're having these headaches almost week in, week out. And what do you think can be done? You know, you said there that, you know, they've been asked to come on board, that the GA are really pushing to get them under the one, you know, umbrella again, if you like. Do you think maybe ban them, or not ban them, but block Croke Park as an example, block more funding? How do you think?
But Stephen, just the example before you come in, the good of this is the LGFA getting 50, 60,000 at Croke Park that I genuinely wouldn't have happened under the GA. I reckon the GA would I don't think they would have done as good a job of promoting that final, for example, as the LGFA have done, just looking in from the outside. But what are your thoughts?
Like, just I'll follow on from your point, Dan, as well. The great work is being done, and like the sponsorship of Lidl and that campaign, they wouldn't have got that with the GA. Where they're like, 100%. For their own organisation to be able to chase a flagship sponsor like that, and for Lidl to push so much in the last couple of years is huge. And I know today they've announced the club championships are going to be sponsored by the credit unions, the current account.ie, their new credit unions. So like, there is great work being done there, but logistically and operationally, we're not functioning for the grassroots player. Like, we're not. It's, from my own point of view, Portlaoise this year, like, our girls are playing a Camogie match on a Friday and a football match either on a Saturday night or Sunday morning, and that's week out, week in, week out.
So two matches in a weekend.
Oh yeah, most weekends. And if not, like, there was 1 week there where there was 4 matches in 1 week. So like, you're there preaching about
basically.
Yeah, you're preaching about recovery. You're preaching about best practice as regards S&C, and then this is happening, and it's just, you're seeing girls at the ages of 17 and 18s who are on physio tables every single game, and they're 17 and 18, and it's something that needs to be looked at. And what's the solution? For me, it's come in under the one umbrella. They want to protect their own power, they want to protect their own independence, and they want to protect their own positions and salaries, probably, if we're being honest about it. But it needs to be really looked at, and what's the best solution here for the playing population, and not who's sitting in an office in Croke Park, because it's the players that are losing out. They deserve an equal footing, if not a better footing, than the men. Their game needs to be promoted, and they need the opportunity to play for their club and represent their club and the people who they've grown up with since they were kids.
Absolutely shocking. We've actually linked a couple of tweets about that Camogie motion and I guess the motion was defeated off the back of the LGFA doing it. But it's like you said, Stephen, it's just, I don't think anyone can disagree with you that 4 games in a weekend for any players is ridiculous. But we do have a little bit of break news here, and just moving on to into inter-county, and we wanted to speak about a couple of people who have come out and had their opinion. But in the last few minutes there, so we're recording this about 10 a.m, that the GPA have asked their membership if they want the Alliance Leagues and Championship to proceed. So that's a kind of big step, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't see that coming.
No, it literally just released in the last 5 minutes
by John Fogarty in the Irish Examiner. And I think there's been a lot of talk even the last couple of days, a lot of tweets which we'll get into, but it does seem that the players are the ones that ultimately should and maybe will have the final say in this, and I think it'll be mixed by a lot of players across the country, Stephen. And I don't know about your own personal opinion, but you've been in and around a lot with players and inter-county players, even across both codes. And what do you think? Have you heard much in the background? What do you think is going to happen over the next week or two?
And just before you come in, Stephen, just on the questions that have been released them here. So which the following options reflects your opinion for the upcoming 2020 season? Number 1, I want the season to proceed. Number 2, I want to play only if the implementation of the COVID-19 protocols is improved. Or 3, I do not want the season to proceed.
For me, like from our own personals, for the three of us chatting here and for people listening in, we all want to see the inter-county season go ahead. If there's another lockdown for our own headspace, we'd love to be able to watch live games. It was something that was really lacking in the last national lockdown. But, and I've had a conversation with you, Dan, about this, is it doesn't stack up to me in an amateur situation how these players are in a so-called bubble when they're not being rigorously tested and they're not living together. They're probably living in college in another city and travelling an hour and a half to 2 hours back to train, or they're living in the far side of the county. Now in Laois, that's only half an hour away, but say you're in Cork, you could be travelling up to 2 hours to get to training in Cork, and it doesn't add up in all the rest of the guidelines that we're seeing across the country. That how can we protect these players and how can we protect their families, and how are we going to control a scenario where if there is an outbreak in a team that it doesn't get into the community because these players are in the community. Like we look at the Fermanagh situation last night, they were rejected on their request to postpone the game against Clare, and like they have a fair argument. They've got 10 players in isolation who are only coming out of isolation on Saturday, and they want to play a game on Sunday. It's a fair request, and Clare, to be fair to Clare, they said, yeah, we'll play midweek in a neutral venue, but the CCCCCCC, how many C's you're going to put into? They have CCCCC, okay, 4. No, that it'll have to be played on Sunday for the integrity of the competition and whatever else. Like it's just like this is going to happen. It's going to continue to happen, and like it won't be long before. And we have to ask the question: if it was Dublin or Kerry or Galway or Tyrone or Donegal in the same scenario and they couldn't fulfil the fixture in Division 1, would it be the same? Would it be the same rules for everyone? I don't know.
And then if it happens to David Clifford or Conor Callaghan and Noel McGrath or someone like that,
like you're right, because if Fermanagh players, it's not getting the traction in the media it needs. But like you said, if it is
it's those kind of blurred lines with that. And look, I think everyone wants to see the safe return of inter-county football and hurling and everything that it brings around, and the excitement and just the general adding something to everyday life. But I think everyone is worried because what makes the GA so special is that the players are the community and they're involved in clubs and they work locally, and they're genuinely in the community. But if you've got someone like you think of some of the Gaeltacht lads, maybe Brian O'Beugly down in West Kerry, travelling from the Dingle Peninsula into Kearns just outside Killarney for training, and then going up to play Dublin in a match, and just all the he's from an isolated part of Kerry, and maybe God knows if the virus got brought down there, and then all of a sudden it's because of him, he was playing for Kerry, and I think that's just some players mightn't understand that, and it mightn't affect some of the city players, but those rural players could really feel it.
And also on the side of it, it's a different game now than what it is at the club game. And how I mean by that is, I won't mention the teams, but I was at a practice game last week, an inter-county practice game that was here local. And I was like, where are all the players? All the cars were there, everyone was there. And I forgot they were in dressing rooms. And the dressing rooms in this place that they play the game, I know from experience, are very small. Very small. You would struggle to fit 30 in there sitting down. And that was before COVID, it would have been uncomfortable 30. So if you're during COVID and you've got 30 from an inter-county point of view, plus the management that inter-county teams we know carry, in a situation that we're in, plus showers, plus sharing of cars, because there wasn't buses there, it was cars. And we all know not everyone drives, so they have to share a lift somewhere. It's not adding up. It's a different game to what it was at the club. The club, you can manage it a bit more. It's local. You know everybody. If somebody is stuck for a lift, you can get them masked up. You can get whatever else it is. They fill out their questionnaire. They don't use the dressing room. It's all outside. And we know the risks are a lot lower. It's 18 times less likely to contract the disease outside than it is inside. We know these facts. But that's changing now. And you can't not ask someone to shower when they've travelled from Cork to Fermanagh for a game, or Cork to Mayo for a game. You can't expect them to sit in a bus or a car wet because then we're going to see the flu-like symptoms. And without a rigorous testing facility, with all the travelling that's involved, with the operational side of it, it just doesn't seem to be stacking up. And maybe, and this is maybe selfish of me, and people can disagree with me, but maybe the right thing to do would have been let the club finish the club for the year, and we start back in intercounty in January, February time, like we normally do.
Yeah, I think the GBA is kind of reacted, and a couple of those points you made in terms of those COVID protocols, it just sounds by the way they phrased it, like, again, from myself not being outside and I hadn't been to a practice game and not aware that these protocols weren't probably being adhered to as much as they should. We're just getting to a couple of tweets that we were going to...
They're allowed to use changing rooms. Intercounty teams are allowed to use changing rooms now.
Sorry, yeah. So that's
they're allowed to use buses as long as they're socially distant. So teams are having to hire 2 buses to get their entire management squad and teams to games, which is costing more than what it costed prior to COVID. So,
and you're right. And it goes back to they're trying to replicate the Premier League bubble, but they're not getting tested twice a week, A, and B, these players are just going home and told to not pretty much do anything. Do you know what I mean? To keep that bubble when they got home, where the GA players are all working full time. And I think that's the issue. And I know some of them working from home, but you want to come in, Sean?
Yeah, and like you said about the buses, and teams aren't going to be able to constantly social distance for practical reasons rather. And I think that the problem is that there's the the under 21, the men and female senior and minor, and I think it's just I think there's too many things happening, and I don't know, because I think, look, the thing about underage minor and under 21 is, again, you're getting younger people who have more and more social contacts. They're in college or they're living with people, and I think it's just too many variables, if I'm being perfectly honest. And to think how many cases are here, and especially north and south, because that was one of the huge issues in the summer for the GA was, the idea that the north and south and the 6 counties in the north, and maybe would they be left behind. And I think you think of how many cases are in Derry. Are the Derry lads going to be coming to a plane? Or some of their mothers, nurses? How's it going to work?
Yeah, and Longford, they asked for their game to not be in Derry at the weekend. They've made a request to the CCCC again that we move our game to a neutral venue, and that was rejected because they're not comfortable going into Derry. So where does that continue on? Like, are we at a starting point here? Are we at a peak? Are we at a leveling off period, or is it just going to get worse? And there's more areas that are going to get worse. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that for the GA, they're probably in their sense too far down. There's too much committed on this. There's too much riding on it. The idea that there's people, in rural parts of the country that are ready for the games to start. But I just think, sense should prevail personally, and I think there should be a lot more looked into it. But I think the GA themselves are too far down, and I think the players are in the mindset to play again.
And just to read one of the tweets, Sean Heslin there, one of the best footballers in the country, actually, in a Westmeath footballer. At what stage does the inter-county return badly needed in these grim days? And that's in quotation mark commentary end. I'm concerned from a health and welfare perspective, both individually and collectively, for those contributing to the inter-county season. And it's almost like that tweet kind of last night, got a lot of people talking, and, even, Eddie Brennan has come out. He's the least senior hurling manager. Like, I personally would like to see it go ahead with a lot more stringent COVID-19 protocols, but I can understand completely the health and welfare aspect of it.
You think of the celebrations that surrounded Laois's, John McDonough win, and also the win against Dublin in the championship. You think to yourself, if Mayo win the All-Ireland football this year, or Wexford even win the Leinster and win the All-Ireland football, are they going to be stopping people, the Wexford fans dancing at the crossroads? And that is there's a difference between club, and I think there's a lot of people in the country that, mightn't necessarily be connected with a club, but are 100% connected to the county, and they live for those days going to Croke Park, and maybe their families moved on and they've no connection to their club anymore, in terms of players. But I think the county is such an integral part, and I think people are maybe missing that. Not only the celebrations from the players and everything that surrounds it, but if Mayo or Wexford or something happens, like you said, it's the year of the first time evers. If something like that happens, how are the GA going to stop that? And I think that will just be the ultimate. And I think that's what people need to start thinking about almost.
Yeah, like we have to remember, and I don't want to be too harsh on anybody here, that it's amateurs who are running these county boards and who are running this at a grassroots level, and they're going to be in charge of Casement Park, and they're going to be in charge of O'Moore Park, and they're going to be in charge of O'Connor Park, and ensuring that everything has been done to a high standard. But these are amateurs; like, they're not health and safety officers, they're not qualified in health and safety or quality or anything like that. Like, so they are doing their best, but is their best up to a level, like we said, of the Premier League bubble where everything's being maintained and there's a team that are going around holding the showers, holding the dressing rooms after teams, whatever it may be? Like, is the right thing to do is move everything to Croke Park, where we know that can be safe, and there's 6 games on in Croke Park at a weekend. Maybe Munster teams are only travelling as far as Thurles, and that we have a couple of hubs where the teams can play, where we know that all the best support and all the best resources are being pumped into these venues, so that we can ensure that everything's been kept safe, clean, and the welfare of the players has been put first.
And I think the big one, actually, if you think about, if a manager gets it, and there's a few old managers in the county game, not many as there maybe was, but if you think one of them, a manager gets it, and think probably all their close backroom staff will be close contacts, you think more than likely the players will, if they're sharing a dressing room. And I think then, all of a sudden, if a manager gets it, and then the whole dressing room's in doubt, and I think that will be the big worry for people.
Yeah, and I guess, look, on your dressing room point, Stephen, you look at Spurs, they're using the NFL dressing rooms. They have the resources to go to bigger dressing rooms to make it that bit safer. Outside of Croke Park, I can't see anywhere that we'd be able to do that. And the celebrations, to finish up on that, like, look at Liverpool and Leeds, the celebration in the UK. I know I was uncomfortable watching that. It almost kind of, having watched football for a couple of months and really enjoyed it, and then seeing the celebrations, you're like, Jesus, lads, come on. So again, you can only see that replicated if that happens.
And it is only natural, like,
Oh yeah, it's only natural.
There's people that have been following Mayo for 40, 50 years. They haven't seen them win in All Ireland. They've seen them, get so close. God, they need to, they need to celebrate if it happens. And then the GA need to look and say, is it safe for them to do it? Probably not. Should the intercounty, is it safe then for the intercounty? And they need to be asking those questions. And it's good that the GPA have asked the intercounty players. So, we'll hear a lot more from that in the coming days.
Well, we probably hear a lot more about it today, because the championships are due to start on Saturday. We were going to get to a preview. I don't think it's probably right at the moment with it up in the air. There's a Dublin Mead preview I wrote on the website earlier in the week if anyone wants to check it out. It's linked in the description. But listen, Stephen, we appreciate you coming on, and I'm sure we were going to have you back in a couple of weeks anyway for the championship preview. But look, we'll probably get you back maybe sooner than that if other stories break.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Cheers.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Stephen.
Premier League predictions next on the podcast.
My mind's gone running.
So we're moving on to the Premier League predictions this week. First of all, we've got reigning champion Shane Sexton. Shane, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, lads. Thanks for having me back. Good to be back.
And his contender comes in the way of Macdara O'Meara. Macdara, welcome. Thanks for joining us as well.
How you doing? Thanks.
So Shane, talked us through last week. We were talking just before we came on air there, because it was a couple of weeks back. You've Basuma to thank anyway amongst other players.
Yeah, Everton 4-1 up, 92nd minute, and Basuma hits this beautiful volley, and I jumped out of the seat. I haven't celebrated a goal like that in a while. And then the Saints won 2-0, which got me 3 points. So those were probably the two big moments. Yeah, I was delighted to beat Jim. He called Chilwell a pony, and there's no way he could have been back on Tackling Sport after that. So delighted to be here. I think we're all delighted that I came back.
We're very relieved here at Tackling Sport, and we distance ourselves from Ben Chilwell's pony comments, so don't worry about that. So yeah, guys, we'll move on to the Premier League predictions. We want to save the Merseyside derby to the end, so we're going to start with the 3:00 kickoff and Chelsea Southampton. So Shane, as reigning champ, you're up first. Just to give the viewers idea how it works, it's 3 points for correct score and 1 point for getting the right result. So Chelsea Southampton, Shane, how do you see this match going?
I think Chelsea looked pretty good last time out against Palace. I seem to have a better back four, better structure, obviously with Chilwell coming in, and then Azpilicueta as well, giving them sort of a better defensive balance. And I think, like, the scary thing on the Chelsea sort of thing is we still haven't even seen Pulisic or Ziyech. So I imagine Werner will just play up front and the two lads will play off him. I imagine Chelsea are going to have too much quality for the Saints. I know Southampton, good result there against West Brom last time out, but I think Chelsea will just have far too much quality for them. So I'm going to go for a Chelsea 3-0 win.
3-0, interesting enough. So Macdara?
I see the game going pretty much the same way, to be honest. With Werner getting his goal there for Germany, I think he'll start getting a few more. I've have it as 3-1.
Oh, 3-1. Sean, what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on that? I guess with Pulisic and Werner, as the lads mentioned, coming back, when can Frank Lampard find his right team really and really try and kick on Chelsea and see can they maybe push for a title challenge?
Yeah, I actually thought I watched the first half of the Germany-Switzerland game, and Switzerland kind of battered them for most of it. But I thought Werner actually looked really sharp, and he looked a bit of a bright spot for them, and that's something that, you know, the early season form and the lack of it for Werner this year would have annoyed Lampard, because Werner's had chances, you know, and he should have, you know, scored more. And when you're seeing the likes of Vardy and Calvert-Lewin just set the league on fire so far this season. So I you know, sooner rather than later, you'd expect them to score. You know, how good for Leipzig post lockdown in the Bundesliga. So yeah, I think the lads are right. I think Chelsea probably have a little bit too much for Southampton, but you know, last year Southampton shocked everyone and beat them at Stamford Bridge. So
with Femi scoring.
Yeah, there is a case to that.
Absolutely. So listen, we'll move on to the 5:30 game. I don't know why this isn't the main event now, but Manchester City versus Arsenal. Shane, how do you see this one go?
Mikel versus Pep. It should be an interesting match, especially with the big signing of Thomas Partey for Arsenal, which is obviously going to dramatically improve their midfield. But then again, you come back to Arsenal really struggling against the sort of top six sides away from home. I thought City against Leeds were really good for the first 20 minutes. I thought, you know, they could have been 2 or 3 goals ahead. And then as the game went on, they just seemed to have dropped down the gears. But I still think City are going to have just a little bit too much for Arsenal. Looking at Arsenal, they are a lot more solid, I suppose, defensively. But I think they've just struggled against the top six away from home. And I fancy City for 2-1 City.
Interesting enough, close game. So, Macdara, what are your thoughts on this? Arsenal, again, as Shane mentioned, coming in there a little bit more solid at the back, and City do look vulnerable in the back also.
I've gone for a fairly outrageous call here at City 4-1.
City 4-1, wow.
I just think on the back of a draw and a loss, Pep will have them fired up to attack, I think, a weak Arsenal team. Hussey will probably say differently.
Yeah, see, you don't know coming back from international break. A lot of players have been away, and you know, I think Madara is right. We spoke a few weeks ago about Pep normally gets a reaction from his players, and I agree with Shane. I thought they were brilliant against Leeds, and you know, Leeds just dug a result out, and fair play to them. But I thought Manchester City deserved to win the game. The chances they had, a sloppy goal, the keeper makes a mistake, and they concede. I thought Diaz was really good for them at the back and played well for Portugal against France. If games after international break are kind of hard to tell, but yeah, you would worry for Arsenal sort of defensively, and you know, yes, they've been better under Arteta, but away from home, as Shane said, that they're very poor, and yeah, I think it could be goals. So,
Macdara, we'll move on to the Newcastle Manchester United game. So let's put this straight now for the viewers and listeners. You're claiming to be a Manchester United fan for the purpose of the podcast, but you're kind of dipping in and out.
I'd say a football fan. I follow football, but a vague United fan.
So football fan, over to football fan Macdara there for his Newcastle Manchester United prediction.
I've gone for 2-2 here.
Oh wow!
I can't see United recovering after that Tottenham defeat, to be honest. It's just too much for them.
Yeah. It was definitely kind of like a watershed moment almost for Ole Gunnar. Like.
Yeah. Can't see them recovering at all. Newcastle are playing well up front as well. Wilson playing well.
Yeah, we've got Wilson, Fraser. They've kind of got a lot of new players. Shane, what are your thoughts on that as a Manchester United fan and Ole Gunnar?
Yeah, I think I suppose maybe more hope for a big reaction from United. You'd really hope, like after some of that terrible defending against Spurs, that there's, you know, Ollie just gives them a right kick up the backside. As a United fan, you'd be a bit worried. There was rumours that, you know, there was a massive bust up at halftime between Bruno, the manager, Maguire, and then Bruno didn't come out for the second half. As well as that, you know, we see the likes of Maguire getting sent off playing for England, which doesn't exactly help his confidence, which is going to be pretty low anyway. But then, like, you look at Newcastle, yeah, they beat Burnley last time out. I don't think Burnley are a great side. And then looking back further again, they lost to, they were dreadful against Spurs and very poor against Brighton as well. So I do think United will still have enough quality to beat them. So I'm going to stick with my team and stick with 3-1 United.
Yeah, it's sort of an interesting one, because for Ole Gunnar, it might have been the best thing to have an international break and not have another game in the week after, conceding 6 and losing the way they did against Tottenham, I think, with everything that happened. The thing about Newcastle is Newcastle have a decent record against Manchester United. It's one of the sides that, they tend to do well against, considering, how poor they've been in recent years. And the addition of Callum Wilson just gives them a goal threat, and it's something they've lacked for years. So, I definitely see them scoring with Manchester United's defence. Whether they can keep it out. Carl Darlow's in great form and nets. I mean, he's one of the standout keepers this year. So, Ole Gunnar's not in for an easy afternoon, that's for sure.
And of course, the game is going to be one of those pay-per-view games as well. So the next game, which is Sheffield United Fulham. Macdara, we'll go to you for this one. It's hard to get properly excited about this one, but how do you see it going?
Yeah, you stole the words out of my mouth, to be honest. I was going to say a very boring game. Expecting Brewster to get a goal last minute, 1-0 Sheffield.
1-0 Sheffield United. Shane?
Yeah, it doesn't look like the most exciting game on paper, to be fair, but both teams, they badly need a win. And especially Sheffield United, you look at, they're playing Fulham this week, and then next week they have to play Liverpool and then City and Chelsea. So, they really need to get 3 points here, because they could lose the next 3 after. I think a lot of teams would be pretty disappointed not to take sort of 6 points off Fulham this season. And to be fair to Sheffield United, they've been close in the last 3 games, only losing by 1 goal. And in fairness to Fulham, we all like to have a good slagging against Fulham, but they had a good few chances against Wolves and they could have got something out of that game. But in saying that, I do think Sheffield United will just have too much quality for them. So I'm going for Sheffield United 2-0.
This is actually a huge game, I think. You're looking at Sheffield United, who have really struggled this year, and you talk about second season syndrome being a huge issue for them. But like Shane said, I actually watched a lot of the Fulham Wolves game, and defensively they were so much better. I mean, even the goal they concede, Mitrovic is back there diving in front of it, and they were so open at the back. And I think now Scott Parker, the way he spoke about them in the media, he might just change that. So, Sheffield United are in for a tough afternoon, but a big one for both sides. Whether Brewster scores, I'm not sure. He got withdrawn from the England under-21 squad, so whether he's fit for that, we'll wait and see. But 23 million, he'd want to start scoring goals quickly.
Absolutely, and as you mentioned, the run of fixtures for Sheffield United, the next 3 after Fulham against the top side, so massive game for both teams already. Moving on to Palace Brighton, this is the derby that nobody really gets, bar Palace and Brighton fans. Is it something to do with a motorway?
I think it's more, yeah. And they've had incidents though. There was Gus Poyet in the dressing room where they left something. Palace left something in the dressing room against Brighton. So there is bad blood there.
What do you mean left something?
I think they left something rotten in the dressing room or something. But it's a 70-mile derby that it is one of the most bizarre.
Yeah, isn't it? But the fans do tell us that it is a proper rivalry. Shane, how do you see this one go? I
fancy Brighton here. I was disappointed with Palace against Chelsea. I really thought they might get something out of the game, but a few defensive errors. Sacco, I thought, was pretty poor. They're really missing the likes of Cahill and Van Aanholt. I know they're sort of back in training. Whether they'll be involved in this game or not remains to be seen. But I thought, Brighton decent against Everton. Just a thought, Everton were a little bit more clinical in front of goal. But I think Brighton play really good football. I think they'll probably dominate the ball, and Palace will look to play on the break. But I think Brighton 2-1 for me.
Interesting stuff. So big away win for Brighton. So Macdara?
I've gone the exact same as Shane. 2-1 Brighton. Just think Brighton have been good in front of goal, been manning the game as well. Against the United, they completely manned the game. So I'm going 2-1 Brighton.
Yeah, look, well, we spoke at the start of the year about maybe Palace being under pressure, and it's in these kind of games that Palace have kind of struggled in recent years. They're good against the big sides away from home, and they're normally good away anyway. And Brighton, Aaron Connolly had a few chances for Ireland. There's all that stuff with COVID, and yeah, a really big game again for both sides, and two sides will be looking for a win.
Absolutely. So moving on to London Derby, then 4:30 on Sunday, then Spurs, West Ham. Macdara, will go to you. How do you see this game go?
I see it down 3-2 Tottenham. To be honest, Tottenham has been on fire, been very good in front of goal. So West Ham, but I just see Tottenham seeing this one out.
Yeah, you see that? Think Tottenham are a bit dodgy at the back?
Yeah, I don't think they're dodgy enough for West Ham though.
Shane, on to you.
I think it's going to be a draw. I thought West Ham against Wolves and Leicester, 2 unbelievable wins. You know, David Moyes working from home. He's found the secret to his managerial career. He should never be on the sidelines. You know, it'll be interesting to see Spurs, like, will they line up with Son, Kane and Bale? I doubt it. I'd say Bale might come on, but I'd love to see that front three. But like the likes of West Ham, especially against Leicester, like they were so solid defensively. And then like they've got the likes of Antonio and Bowen and Fornals going forward. And then, you know, Rice and Souček in the midfield, very, very impressive. Just really hard to break down. So I think, you know, West Ham on the counter-attack could nick a goal. So I'm going to go for 1-1.
Just before you mention, I guess West Ham's performances recently have almost gone underrated. I think people didn't really want to believe the Wolves game with the behind closed doors and everything, and then subsequent win then as well. So what are your thoughts on West Ham going into this game?
The one thing that impressed me about West Ham against Leicester is Leicester just could not play, and West Ham stopped them playing. And you know, David Moyes, I think he will be back. I think his 2 weeks are done working from home, so it'll be interesting to see that dynamic. But
he might push that out further. I guess
you never know. So Pearce might be busy, but Jared Bowen has been so impressive for me for Wolves, because he came last January with a big price tag. I think 15-20 million. He was probably one of the best players in the Championship for 18 months, and to come into the Premier League, he's sort of adapted, and now he's really flourishing, and you know, he's so impressive, and you know what you're going to get from Antonio. And West Ham have always had quality in their side, but they've never had consistency. And you know, it wouldn't be surprised to see, you know, Tottenham beat them 4-5-0, or you know, West Ham win 2-1, and they have won at the London, or the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. They won the first time there.
They won the first. They were the first team to beat Tottenham, weren't they? So yeah. So we're moving on to 7:15, the Leicester Aston Villa game, which is another pay-per-view game. Macdara, how do you see this one going? I guess Leicester, Jamie Vardy coming into a bit of form, and they after their City win, people were looking at them as potential top 4 contenders again. But now, after that defeat to West Ham, and they also have the Europa League coming up, how do you see this game going against an informed Villa team?
I don't know, personally, I think Villa probably peaked against Liverpool. Can't see them playing like that again. Unbeaten in the Prem so far, so I think Leicester are probably the team to do it. So I've gone 2-0.
2-0. So 2-0. Leicester. I've forgotten actually Aston Villa, so they've won all 3 of their games so far. Like yeah, it's pretty impressive. Shane, how do you see this one going? As Macdara says, you know, Villa probably put in a peak performance where everything went right, deflections went in, that sort of thing. How do you see them coming up against a tough away game like this?
I think Villa do all right. I have 2-2 for this game. I think, you know, Leicester, they weren't great against West Ham. They seem to run out of ideas against a well-organised team. I think they will have a bit more success against Villa. But, you know, Villa, they're coming off a massive win against Liverpool, and they look like a really exciting team this year. You know, Jack Grealish sort of last season had it all to do on his own, but now this season he's got the sort of likes of Watkins and Barkley, and it'll be interesting to see what Traore is like, their new signing as well. So, you know, Grealish shouldn't really have to do it all again or all himself this season. So, you know, I think it should be an entertaining game, plenty of goals. I think I'm going to go for 2-2.
Yeah, that performance against Liverpool, like, and probably the worst thing about the international break for them is, you know, they had that rhythm, they had that excitement. The next thing you want to do, I think Jamie Carragher said on commentary, the next thing you want to do is go to the training ground on Monday. But so it's going to be interesting to see that dynamic. They 3 wins from 3. They've been the real surprise package. And like you said, they've added a little bit of quality around Grealish. They've kind of matched Grealish by Grealish deciding to stay. They've sort of built a team around him and matched his quality. And the likes of Barkley, Watkins, Trezeguet is a really good player. Whether Traore comes in a few weeks, it'll be interesting to see. But I'll be keeping an eye on Watkins now after the hat-trick. Can he kick on now? Can he score more goals? And you know, he's that player we spoke about at the start of the season. He's just a fantastic player to watch in full flow.
Moving on then to 5:30 game, West Brom Burnley, and I guess Macdara, the question to you is: are you going to be paying $16.95 to watch this on Monday?
Not a hope, no, not a hope. I've gone for a West Brom 1-0 win. 2 teams both yet to win a game, and can see it being quite a boring game until a late goal, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's not really that something to kind of get really excited about. Shane, can you see it going any other way, West Brom Burnley?
I think West Brom win 2-1. I think both teams they're going to sort of look forward to playing each other. Both teams will probably think that they can get something from the game. I sort of feel a bit sorry for Sean Dyche. They didn't really add anything or any quality in the transfer window. It seems to be the case every year. And looking at West Brom, they look decent enough going forward. They've made sort of a few defensive mistakes so far, but I think they might just have enough to get over the line on this one. So going for 2-1 West Brom.
Yeah, and I think West Brom can score more goals than Burnley. It's as simple as that. Burnley just really are lacking. I think they by far had the worst transfer window in the Premier League. They lost 4 key players who ran down their contracts because of COVID and everything, and they haven't improved. So, I'm really worried about Burnley this year. And one thing about West Brom is defensively they might be poor, but they have quality to win games, the likes of Pereira, the graded in Janga. So, look, if West Brom can get firing, then, absolutely, I don't think Burnley can match them.
So moving on then to Monday Night Football, 2 games left. Leeds United versus Wolves here. This has the makings of being a bit of a cracker, Shane.
I really like watching Leeds play. I sort of fear for them against City the first 10, 15 minutes. But to be fair to Leeds, they grew into the game and they went toe-to-toe with City, which was a bit of a basketball match at times. And Leeds could have nicked it. And then, the likes of... I'm a little bit worried about Wolves. Very unconvincing win against Fulham. They were poor against West Ham. As well as that, Wolves have got so many Portuguese players, and now Ronaldo has COVID, so that could affect half the Wolves team, and perhaps we could see a very different starting 11. Hopefully that won't be the case. But, I think Leeds can kick on after that good result against City, so I'm going for 3-1 Leeds.
3-1 Leeds. Then Macdara, how do you see this one going? I guess Leeds have kind of taken the Premier League by storm since they got promoted.
Yeah, I've gone for 2-1 Leeds. I was thinking Leeds are our team to play at Eden Road. And can see goals being scored. And also, as Shane said, with the Wolves team being so heavily Portuguese and Ronaldo having coronavirus, I wonder any of them close contacts with Ronaldo and how different the team will be.
Yeah, well, it's just if Portuguese, it's all fun and games, getting loads of Portuguese players, but I guess if someone gets COVID, you're in a bit of bother.
And everyone wants to be a close contact to Ronaldo, in fairness. You even saw that with the French players' Instagram. But I think it's all set up for Leeds because, Wolves, let's not forget, they had a late pre-season with everything, the international break, but they were also in Europe, got to the latter stages of the Europa League. So they haven't really had that time. And, losing Doherty, that's a real big loss. You can't really, it's different with a right back, but it's very hard to replace a right wing back, but that one of the hardest positions to fill. So, like Shane said, you would little worry for Wolves. Like they're not going to do anything drastically bad this season, but I think it's set up for Leeds to beat them.
So then we're moving on to the Merseyside derby. But Sean, you wanted to have this as the game of the weekend, as over City Arsenal. Can you explain your reason there?
This is going to be unbelievable. It's such a pity that's the first game, 12 o'clock.
After an international break.
Yeah, after an international break, there's always a little bit of fatigue. Like you'd love if it was Sunday 4:30 and there's extra storylines.
Sorted out Sky or pay-per-view even.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be unbelievable. Macdara, how do you see this one going? Everton have been the team of the Premier League this year, top of the table. James Rodriguez, Calvert-Lewin continuing his good form for England. How do you see this one?
Yeah, look, Everton have been an absolute pleasure to watch this year. Just everything they're doing seems to be going right. But I think that the fun has to end, and I think Liverpool are the team to end the fun. I've gone for a fairly outrageous call here at 5-2 Liverpool.
5, and as that probably price is probably about 5-2.
Wouldn't be taking 5-2 now on that.
How did you see this one going?
I think I have it down as a 2-2 draw. Really like Everton. One dodgy goalkeeper versus another dodgy goalkeeper. So it should be very interesting for the neutrals. It should be an entertaining game. I've gone for 2-2. Really looking forward to this match. Should be probably the pick of the weekend.
No ways to speak about Queven, Kelleher there, Shane. Sean, how do you see this one pairing out?
Yeah, Pickford against Adrian, like two goalkeepers that are liable to do anything. It's either going to be like one of the greatest Premier League games of all time, or it's going to be a Merseyside derby of recent times, which is a 0-0 bore fest.
They're always boring, aren't they?
Yeah,
they're always at 12:30.
Yeah, or they just, when Everton were trying to stop Liverpool winning the league and there was a draw and Everton celebrated as if they won the Premier League. But, it's either going to be an unbelievable game or, a 0-0.
Absolutely, yes. Listen, we look forward to the Premier League predictions. We'll have this segment again next Thursday. Only one winner, as I mentioned. Three points for correct score and 1 point for a correct result. So that's it. That's it for today's show. If you do get in touch, stay in touch with the show at Tackling Sport on social media or subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast. And all that's left to say, it's goodbye from Shane and Macdara.
Goodbye.
See you, lads. Cheers.
Goodbye
Thanks
from
for having
Sean.
me.
Goodbye.
No worries. And we'll see one of you guys next week. And for everyone else, take care. Have a great weekend.
See you next week.